welcome to a snowy Sunday, Christ Church. Today being the day after January 6th, or the Epiphany, we're going to focus our attention today on two great Epiphany hymns. Arise, shine, for thy light is come, and the glory of the Lord is risen upon thee. For behold, darkness shall cover the earth, and gross darkness the people. But the Lord shall arise upon thee, and his glory shall be seen upon thee. Certainly, these familiar words from the prophet Isaiah can be heard as the rallying cry, the essential message, the challenge of the Feast of the Epiphany, the liturgical season which we celebrate and begin today. While our sisters and brothers in the Orthodox Church celebrate Christ's birth during this time in the liturgical calendar, specifically on January 7th, today, we in Western Christianity commemorate it on January 6th, or yesterday, the visit of the Magi, the three kings to the Christ child. In so doing, the Church affirms the physical manifestation of Jesus Christ as God incarnate to all people on earth. Today's musical offering features two of the great hymns composed for the season of Epiphany. Perhaps the most well-known American hymn for this liturgical season is We Three Kings. With a text and music composed by John Henry Hopkins, Jr., this stirring and stately Epiphany carol has found its way into the minds and hearts of the American citizenry, irrespective of any particular religious affiliation. Hopkins was the son of John Henry Hopkins, Sr., who served as the first bishop of the Episcopal Diocese of Vermont and eventually became the 8th presiding bishop of the Episcopal Church in the United States. The younger Mr. Hopkins was born in Pittsburgh and earned both undergraduate and graduate degrees at the University of Vermont. After spending some time as a journalist, he attended and graduated from General Seminary in New York and was ordained a priest. He served as the first music teacher at General Seminary from 1855 until 1857, and he composed several hymns during that period, as well as editing the Church Journal. He was an accomplished author, illustrator, and designer. Perhaps most importantly during this time, he composed the words and music for We Three Kings. He did this as part of a Christmas pageant for his nieces and nephews. His text reflects the rich traditional lore associated with the coming of the Magi. The biblical account of the journey of these visitors does not attempt to identify them other than to say that they were from the east. They had studied the stars, and they had traveled a great distance to see the newborn baby Jesus. The text of the 5 stanzas with a refrain after each offers a fulsome narrative of the visitation of the Magi. If you have a hymnal, please turn to number 128 and sing the first stanza of this venerable Epiphany hymn. Considered to be among the greatest poets of the 20th century, Thomas Stearns Eliot, T.S. Eliot, was born in St. Louis, Missouri in 1888 to a Boston Brahmin family. Having studied at Milton Academy and at Harvard, Eliot moved to England in his mid-20s, where he settled, became a British subject in 1927, and renounced his American citizenship at age 39. As an aside, I might mention that in those days, if one graduated from Milton Academy and was accepted to study at Harvard, there was an arrangement that provided that the person could complete his degree requirements at Harvard in 3 years rather than the usual 4. So Eliot's famous poem, The Journey of the Magi, was written in 1927, and in it he retells the story of the biblical Magi who, according to the Gospel of St. Matthew, made the arduous journey to Bethlehem. The biblical account of the journey of these visitors, as I said earlier, does not attempt to identify them other than to say that they were from the east, they had studied the stars, and they had traveled a very great distance to see the newborn baby Jesus. A narrative is told from the point of view of one of the Magi. The poem expresses themes of alienation, regret, and a feeling of powerlessness in a changed world. Listen now to the compelling words of The Journey of the Magi by T.S. Eliot.
Good morning, Christ Church, and blessed Epiphany. The Journey of the Magi by T.S. Eliot. A cold coming we had of it, just the worst time of the year for a journey, and such a long journey. The waves deep and the weather sharp, the very dead of winter. And the camels galled, sore-footed, refractory, lying down in the melting snow. There were times we regretted the summer palaces on slopes, the terraces, and the silken girls bringing sherbet. Then the camel men, cursing and grumbling and running away and wanting their liquor and women. And the night fires going out, and the lack of shelters, and the cities hostile, and the towns unfriendly, and the villages dirty, and charging high prices. A hard time we had of it. At the end, we preferred to travel all night, sleeping in snatches, with the voices singing in our ears, saying that this was all folly. Then at dawn, we came down to a temperate valley, wet, below the snow line, smelling of vegetation, with a running stream and a watermill beating the darkness, and 3 trees on the low sky. And an old white horse galloped away in the meadow. Then we came to a tavern with vine leaves over the lintel, 6 hands at an open door dicing for pieces of silver, and feet kicking the empty wineskins. But there was no information, and so we continued, and arriving at evening, not a moment too soon, finding the place. It was, you might say, satisfactory. All this was a long time ago, I remember, and I would do it again. But set down this. Set down this. Were we led all that way for birth or death? There was a birth, certainly. We had evidence and no doubt. I had seen birth and death, but had thought they were different. This birth was hard and bitter agony for us, like death, our death. We returned to our places these kingdoms, but no longer at ease here in the old dispensation with an alien people clutching their gods. I should be glad of another death.
You know, as Episcopalians, we sometimes joke about the fact that much of our religious practice and our services and how they're organized and structured, we have really borrowed, as it were. I'm using that word instead of stolen, but we've borrowed them from other traditions, particularly the Roman Catholics and the Lutherans. So this other great Epiphany hymn, which we consider today, is an example of something quite wonderful that we borrowed from the Lutherans. How Bright Appears the Morning Star is found in our hymnal at number 497, and it's one of the great hymns for Epiphany. Both the text and the music were written by a 16th century Lutheran pastor whose name was Philip Nicolai. Along with Nicolai's other great contribution to hymnody, namely the wonderful Advent hymn, Sleepers Wake, A Voice is Sounding, this hymn, How Bright Appears the Morning Star, was well known by Johann Sebastian Bach. In fact, the version that we sing from our hymnal was harmonized by the Cantor of Leipzig, J.S. Bach. Although Nicolai was expelled from an early pastorate during the Counter-Reformation, Philip Nicolai, the son of a Lutheran pastor, earned a doctorate in theology from the University of Wittenberg, and he was subsequently elected the chief pastor of St. Catherine's Church in Hamburg. So, once again, turning to your hymnal at 497, please join in singing the first stanza of How Bright Appears the Morning Star. So a blessed Epiphany to all on this snowy Sunday.